Nurse Asha Thakur had never worked in Wing C. Most of the staff hadn't. It had been shut down long before she joined, and for good reason. Rumors floated through the sterile halls of St. Alora's Medical Institute like errant four tubes. Something about a toxic leak, faulty anesthesia equipment, whispers of negligence followed by tragedy. No one ever gave specifics. But after years of disuse, Wing C had been reopened. Budget cuts made it necessary, and administration assured everyone it was sanitized, inspected, and fully operational. Asha's first night shift in Wing C felt strangely muffled. The walls were thick, soundproof perhaps. The hallway lights ran at 70% brightness due to an energy-saving mode that gave everything a dull, greenish tint. 5 rooms, all occupied, 3 elderly patients recovering post-op, 1 middle-aged man with a renal issue, and a young woman in for psychiatric evaluation. At 1:23 a.m., the call bell rang from room 304. The renal patient. "Pain in my side," he muttered. Felt like someone pinched inside. His vitals were normal, but Asha noticed something odd. The pulse monitor, usually emitting gentle beeps, flashed erratically for a moment, then settled. The man winced. "You felt it again?" she asked. He nodded. "It's like a whisper in my ribs." Over the following week, patients assigned to Wing C began to show unusual patterns. Fevers that spiked and dropped within hours. Disorientation. One elderly man, entirely lucid during the day, became manic after sunset, screaming about being followed, calling for his long-dead wife. Asha felt a responsibility to understand. She asked Dr. Menon, her supervisor, if she could review patient history stored in the archive room beneath Wing B. He gave her a long look. "You won't find much." Records were redacted during the inquiry. Dr. Menon hesitated. Back in '86. It wasn't a leak. It was a coordinated organ harvesting attempt without consent, done under the table by a team of 5. When it came out, they all vanished. One committed suicide. We don't talk about it. The archives were poorly lit. Dust hovered like webs. Asha found a folder marked Wing C incident files. Inside were clinical photos of a boy no older than 8. His face was serene. Too serene. Organs had been removed while he was under, except one note said, "Awake during last extraction." Attached were psychiatric notes. The child had claimed voices inside the machines and in the walls. One line stood out. Patient 0 demonstrated conscious response to pain despite anesthesia. Claimed voices fed on sensation. Night shifts took on a new rhythm. Around 3 a.m., various machines in Wing C would spike briefly, pulse monitors, respirators, infusion pumps, then return to normal. Asha tried replacing wires, moving patients, resetting systems. Nothing changed. One night, while checking room 308, she heard a sound like static from the wall outlet. She leaned closer and heard it clearly, a whispering tone, too low to distinguish the words. She unplugged the monitor. The whispering stopped. She reported it. IT ran diagnostics. Nothing found. In desperation, she brought her own audio recorder and placed it near the bed. Later playback revealed faint voices not from the room, but seemingly inside the machine. They said her name. CCTV cameras had recently been installed after complaints of equipment displacement. One showed the hallway outside Wing C empty during routine checks. But at 3:16 a.m., something appeared. A shadow, human height, but flickering. It moved along the corridor wall, paused outside room 304, and seemed to flatten into the door. Security dismissed it as data corruption. Asha disagreed. The next night, she stayed behind after her shift. She watched the cameras in real time from the central surveillance console. At exactly 3:16 a.m., room 304's door creaked slightly open. Patient deterioration worsened. One elderly woman developed sudden heart arrhythmia with no known cause. She began to murmur names that weren't hers, repeating, "He's still here," over and over. Asha confronted Dr. Menon. "There was a boy," she said. "The voices mention him. Was he real?" Menon sighed. "More real than most things we believe. He died on the table, but his brain kept functioning for 12 minutes after clinical death." Functioning. He spoke. He said he could see every person who touched him. Said he could follow them. It wasn't on the map. Between rooms 308 and 312, there was a door with a faded number, 310, never used. One night, the handle turned by itself. Inside, sterile walls, no furnishings. But in the center sat a single monitor connected to nothing, just humming, and a name etched on the wall with what looked like nail scratches, Patient 0. Asha touched the monitor. A screech filled her ears. She collapsed. She awoke outside the room, disoriented. Her audio recorder, left inside, had captured one final phrase. "I want my voice back." Asha requested reassignment. She wrote an internal report, then sent it anonymously to the press. Days later, Wing C was closed again, no reason given. Every nurse assigned to the wing over the past month began reporting auditory hallucinations. One was admitted for psychiatric treatment. Another fled the city. The hospital denies all claims. Wing C is sealed. But sometimes, the hallway lights flicker between 3:15 and 3:17 a.m., and one child's voice still murmurs through the walls. It was 2:37 a.m. when the emergency call came through to Bevi District Hospital, nestled within the highlands of Himachal Pradesh. A bus accident in the Kinnaur Valley, multiple casualties scattered down a ravine. One patient had been stabilized en route and was transferred via ambulance under critical code black. Unknown identity, unstable vitals, no known allergies, and no accompanying documents except a smudged ID. The ER staff had seen worse, but something about this patient felt off. He was male, mid-30s, unconscious, but with no visible injuries. Just a deep gash across his chest and needle scars along both arms. They assumed he was a traveler or trekker, perhaps a hermit. What puzzled the team was his heart rate irregular but powerful, almost like it pushed back against the monitors. At 4:12 a.m., the patient awoke. He didn't scream. He didn't thrash. He looked around slowly, eyes unreadable, then whispered to Nurse Yadav, "Don't let them touch me. Not again." He wouldn't elaborate. His body remained still, but his pulse jumped sporadically. When asked for his name, he stared blankly. That day, strange events began. Blood bags stored in the cooler vanished overnight. Surgical trays were found out of place. Room temperatures dropped without explanation in his ward. Yadav started keeping notes. What she noticed was disturbing. Disturbances only happened between 2:30 a.m. and 4:30 a.m., the window when the man had arrived. 3 days in, the patient whispered during sleep. Words were unclear, but he repeated two phrases, "Sanctuary undone," and "They opened the gate inside me." Nurse Yadav began experiencing faint headaches. A janitor found strange scratch marks on the wall of the patient's room. She thought they were made by tools. Later, she discovered a paper tucked under his mattress. It was covered in intricate hand-drawn symbols, looping lines intersected with jagged circles. One resembled an open surgical ribcage. Another resembled an eye pierced with scalpels. The staff dismissed it as delusional art, but Yadav felt compelled. She began redrawing some of them herself in her journal, just to understand. Hospital Administrator Dr. Nirmal reviewed CCTV footage after complaints of missing supplies. What he saw troubled him. On the night of July 14th, the hallway outside the patient's room flickered. Two shadows stood near the door, motionless. The footage timed them at 2:59 a.m., but staff logs showed no one entered the ward. In room 9, the patient was asleep, but at 3:03 a.m., his bed levitated by 2 inches, only for 6 seconds. When confronted with the footage, the patient said nothing. He closed his eyes and hummed. For 30 minutes. Nurse Yadav sought answers and traveled to the edge of Kinnaur, where the accident reportedly occurred. Villagers spoke reluctantly, referencing an abandoned monastery on a high cliff. It had been shut down 5 years earlier after the deaths of 5 acolytes. One elder spoke quietly. They believed pain carved paths. That inside suffering, a door opens. The last one they called him the vessel. Yadav found an archived article in a local paper. It showed a blurry photo of 5 men in ceremonial robes surrounding a sixth, who had markings across his chest. The photo's caption, "The Cult of Internal Sanctum." She was certain the man in her hospital matched the photo. Yadav confronted the patient, showing the photo. He finally spoke, slowly. They took me in, trained me to feel, not just pain, to amplify it. They believed every incision was a message, every suture a seal. She asked what happened to the others. They became part of me. When the last door opened, I was left with echoes. That night, Yadav dreamt of an operating theater. Her hands moved involuntarily, slicing skin into symbols. She awoke with her palms bleeding, not deeply, just thin cuts forming a circle. She didn't tell anyone. The patient disappeared on the 7th night. At exactly 3:01 a.m., all hospital monitors in the wing flatlined, then restarted. His bed was empty. No footprints, no trace. Surveillance showed his room empty for hours, then briefly recorded a pulse of black static. No human shape. Yadav later found a folded gauze beneath the bed. Inside, one drawn symbol, identical to the ribcage she had copied earlier. The hospital labeled the case a clerical mishap. The staff involved were reassigned. But the symbols, those markings, began to appear again. In other wards, sometimes on X-ray films, sometimes on skin. The secrets still linger somewhere in that place somewhere. Although the staff requested transfer, but due to constant denial in the requests, they all resigned and left the place. A lot of people have tried working there, but after a few weeks, everyone started to experience uncertain things. Interestingly, the place still operates today. Dr. Meera Sharma had just returned to her former residency hospital in New Delhi after 7 years abroad. Now head of neurology, she was tasked with digitizing legacy patient files and integrating new MRI tech. During her archival sweep, she came across a series of magnetic resonance scans dated from 2009 to 2013. Most were mundane, until she reached folder 73. Inside were 23 scans flagged for anomalies subtle but chilling. In several cross-sections of temporal lobes, there were dense clusters shaped unnaturally. Two symmetrical. One image resembled a face in profile, another smiling directly at the lens. All flag scans were logged by one attending physician, Dr. R.K. Kothari, a brilliant but eccentric neurologist who had retired after a breakdown and now lived in assisted care nearby. Dr. Sharma visited him, hoping to resolve the anomalies. He was quiet, lucid, but his words unsettled her. I tried to remove what was speaking. It wasn't always inside the brain. Sometimes it was behind it. He refused further discussion. She asked him what he meant by speaking. Thoughts not born from the patient. Words that came from elsewhere. Over weeks, Sharma tracked the 23 patients. A surprising number had died of aneurysms, strokes, or sudden neurodegenerative collapses. In most cases, no clear cause. She noticed a trend. Each had complained of auditory hallucinations weeks before symptoms worsened, voices saying names, memories that weren't theirs. One patient, archived only by initials, claimed she could hear the MRI, even when not inside it. Another said his dreams had turned into surveillance feeds, his brain replaying what the hospital saw. Out of professional curiosity or creeping dread, Dr. Sharma scheduled her own MRI. It was routine. The tech saw no issues. But when she reviewed the images herself, she saw a pattern. A slight curvature in her right temporal lobe, faint but deliberate. Her assistant joked, "Looks like a smile." She didn't laugh. In the following nights, she began experiencing mild vertigo and light sensitivity. During sleep, she heard muffled whispers. Not her voice, not her thoughts. She checked the scans again. The curvature had grown. It now extended toward her speech center. In deep archives, Sharma found an unfiled report from 2011. It was written by Dr. Kothari just before retirement. We may have mistaken perception as pathology. What if brain tissue folds to accommodate uninvited cognition? Not memory, but presence. She began cross-referencing with global cases. In Sweden, similar lobe anomalies matched cultural mythologies of spirit possession. In Japan, they were linked with hikikomori patients and specific sonic hallucinations. A pattern, shape embedded in tissue, voice embedded in thought. Sharma returned to Kothari once more. "You saw them in the scans," she said. "The faces." He replied, "They're not faces. They're masks." She pressed on, Masked for what? He whispered. Translators. Filters. You don't hear the full voice. You hear only what you can survive. She asked what happens when the mask fails. He laughed, then cried. Then your thoughts are no longer yours. Sharma continued working, quietly, cautiously. She withdrew from teaching, skipped conferences. The anomaly in her own brain had not. She tried finding numerous other people about these happenings, but no one had clear answers. It was clear that the modern science did not have an answer for these. The answers lied outside the modern realm, and Sharma is still looking for answers.